Zayden Miller stared at the cracked screen of his phone like it was mocking him. "Come on, man," he muttered, bouncing his 5-year-old daughter Sienna on his hip as the grocery store clerk rang up their items. $32.80, the cashier said, bored. Zayden slid his card. Declined. Sienna looked up at him with wide brown eyes, clutching her worn teddy bear. "Daddy, can we still get the apples?" He forced a smile. "Of course, sweetheart." He paid in cash barely enough and left the store with 2 bags and a heart heavy with guilt. Once they got home to their tiny 2-bedroom apartment in Queens, he made Sienna grilled cheese, gave her a bath, and tucked her in under her unicorn blanket. Then, sitting on the couch with a beer he'd been saving, he did something he hadn't done in 5 years. He downloaded a dating app. He didn't expect anything. He wasn't looking for love. But between juggling 2 jobs, co-parenting with an ex who'd moved 3 states away, and trying to give Sienna some kind of normalcy, he just wanted connection. A smile. A laugh, something. He uploaded a photo of him and Sienna at the park, her on his shoulders, both grinning. His bio was short. Single dad, mechanic, loves grilled cheese and bedtime stories, just trying to keep up. He didn't expect anyone to swipe right, but she did. Her name was Odette Zeller. Her profile picture was simple jeans, a white shirt, sitting on a rooftop at sunset. Her bio read, "I like honesty, I hate small talk, and I drink too much coffee. Let's skip the pretending." They met at a small corner cafe in Brooklyn that Sunday afternoon. He was early. She was exactly on time. Odette walked in like she owned the place, not in a flashy way, but like she didn't owe anyone an explanation. Her chestnut hair was swept into a loose bun, sunglasses perched on her head. She wore a leather jacket, dark jeans, and boots that looked expensive but not flashy. Zayden stood awkwardly and offered a hand. "Zayden," he said. She shook it, firm and warm. "Odette." They sat. He ordered black coffee. She ordered a cappuccino with oat milk. "So," she said, leaning back. "Mechanic, huh? Yeah, I work at a shop in Astoria. And I pick up side jobs fixing up motorcycles. It pays the bills." He hesitated. "Most of the time." Odette tilted her head. "That's real, I like that." Zayden chuckled, unsure what to make of her. "And what do you do?" "I run a company," she said simply. He blinked. "Like what kind of company?" "Tech, software, data solutions, logistics, boring stuff," he laughed. "Sounds like something my laptop would understand better than me." She smiled, her eyes lighting up. Exactly. What he didn't know and what she didn't offer was that she wasn't just running a company. She was the CEO of Zeller Dynamics, one of the fastest-growing tech firms in Manhattan. Billion-dollar contracts, private investors, corporate takeovers, the works. But she didn't want to lead with that, because for once she didn't want to be seen as the boss. Just a woman. They talked for 2 hours. About life, about raising kids. He mentioned Sienna, her favorite animal, and her obsession with glitter glue, about failed dreams and second chances. She didn't judge the fact that he was a single dad. She didn't flinch when he said he'd barely scraped together rent last month. And he didn't ask why a woman like her with designer boots and eyes that looked like they'd seen the world was sitting in a tiny cafe with a guy who smelled faintly of engine grease. After the date, she glanced at him as they stood on the sidewalk. "I like this," she said. "You're refreshing." "Yeah," he asked, scratching the back of his neck. "I don't usually do this stuff." "Me neither." She looked up at him, lips slightly parted. "Can I see you again?" He blinked. "You want to?" "Yes." He grinned. "Then yeah, absolutely." They met again that week. A walk through Central Park. Then takeout and a movie at his place after Sienna fell asleep. Odette brought cupcakes. He let her pick the movie. She picked an old rom-com with cheesy music and predictable endings. By the 3rd date, Zayden realized something was happening. This wasn't casual. This wasn't just company. This mattered. But he couldn't figure her out. She never talked about her job beyond vague answers. She didn't mention family. Every time they met, it was in his world, never hers. One night, as they sat on his fire escape sharing Chinese food, he asked, "You ever gonna let me see your place?" Odette grew quiet. "It's not that I don't want to," she said finally. "It's just complicated." Zayden nodded slowly. "You married?" Her eyes snapped to his. "No." "God, no." "Then what?" She looked at him seriously. "You'll find out, just not yet." He wanted to push, but something in her face told him not to, so he nodded. "Okay." She leaned her head against his shoulder. You're different, Zayden, different how? You don't want anything from me. You're just, you, should I be someone else? No, she said softly, don't ever be. What neither of them said out loud was that they were falling, fast, hard, and neither of them had any idea what to do with it, especially not Odette. Because when she stepped into her world past the penthouse doors, into the boardrooms and the flashing cameras, she wasn't the woman eating dumplings on a fire escape with a mechanic. She was the CEO with $1 billion empire, and she had no idea how to tell him. Not without losing the one thing she didn't know she was looking for: love. Zayden adjusted the collar of his cleanest shirt, not exactly ironed, but not wrinkled either, and glanced into the cracked mirror in the hallway. Sienna was already at his sister's for the night, her overnight bag packed with her favorite pajamas, coloring books, and the pink flashlight she insisted on sleeping with. He'd promised her pancakes in the morning. He grabbed his keys and headed out the door, heart ticking a little too fast. Odette had invited him to a gallery opening in Soho. She hadn't said much about it, only that a friend of hers was the featured artist, and it might be fun. He hadn't exactly felt like he belonged in an art gallery since high school when he'd been forced to take an elective on European Impressionism, but he wasn't going to pass up time with her. When he arrived, he paused outside the building. Clean glass front, a valet in a black suit, and a red velvet rope that felt more nightclub than gallery. He hesitated, then stepped forward. Inside, the space glowed with soft lighting. Paintings framed in gold and black hung from pristine walls, and people in tailored clothes held champagne flutes and murmured words like texture and provocative use of space. Zayden kept his hands in his pockets. He was used to grease under his nails and the sound of drills, not jazz music and canapés. Then he saw her. Odette stood near the center of the room, talking to a man in a navy suit. Her hair was down, falling in waves over one shoulder. She wore a long black dress, simple but striking, and heels that made her taller than he'd ever seen her. She looked like she belonged here. And for the first time, Zayden wondered if he was just a detour in her life. She caught his eye and excused herself from the conversation. "You came," she said as she reached him, her voice warm but slightly breathless. "I said I would." "You clean up well," she said, and her eyes swept over him, not in a judging way, more like she was memorizing something. He glanced around. "So, which one's your friend's painting?" "That one," she said, pointing to a large canvas with bold slashes of color and a title he couldn't pronounce. He tilted his head. "It kind of looks like my shop floor after a brake fluid spill." She laughed, the kind of laugh that turned heads. "You're impossible." "I try." A server passed with a tray of hors d'oeuvres. Odette grabbed one and handed it to him. "Try this." He bit into it cautiously. "What is this?" "Tastes like a fancy pizza roll. It's fig and goat cheese on crostini." He nodded, chewing. "Still tastes like a pizza roll." She rolled her eyes and took his arm. "Come on, I want you to meet someone." They crossed the room, and Zayden noticed how people moved around her, not just with familiarity but with respect. The way heads tilted when she passed, the way the man in the corner straightened his tie when she glanced his way. It wasn't just that she was beautiful. There was something else, something that hinted at power. She introduced him to a woman named Elise, who Odette said was a gallery owner. Then to another man named Henry, who apparently curated exhibitions in Paris. Zayden shook hands, nodded politely, and mostly tried not to say anything that would make Odette regret bringing him. When they finally stepped outside for air, the night was cool and quiet compared to the hum inside. She leaned against the brick wall, looking up at the city lights. "Why didn't you tell me you knew people like that?" he asked softly. She didn't look at him. "Because knowing people doesn't matter to me the way it used to." He waited. She didn't explain. "I didn't exactly feel like I fit in there," he said. "I didn't either," she replied. He studied her. "That's not true. I used to think I had to, that if I didn't show up to every event, shake every hand, play the part, I'd lose everything I'd worked for. But lately, I've started wondering what I'm really doing all this for." He leaned beside her. "You're successful, you've built something, that's not nothing." She turned to him. "And you think fixing engines and raising a daughter isn't just as important?" He didn't answer. "I didn't invite you because I wanted you to fit in," she said. "I invited you because I wanted you there." He looked at her then, really looked. You confused the hell out of me, he admitted. She smiled faintly. Good. I wouldn't want to be obvious. That night, they didn't go back to his place. Instead, they walked. Down streets lit with broken neon signs and the glow of corner bodgas, past closed shops and late-night ramen joints. She bought them hot chocolate from a food cart, and they sat on a bench in silence, sipping from paper cups. Why me? He asked finally. You could be with anyone. She stared ahead. Because when I'm with you, I don't have to be anything else. I don't have to prove anything. You see me. Without the armor, he swallowed hard. And what if I want to see all of it, not just the pieces you think I can handle? She didn't speak, but her hand found his, fingers threading through his. The next morning, Zayden dropped Sienna off at school, kissed her forehead, and drove to work with too many thoughts pressing against his ribs. He was halfway through replacing a timing belt when his phone buzzed in his pocket. He wiped his hands and checked the screen. Unknown number. Voicemail. He played it. Mr. Miller, this is Jennifer from Zeller Dynamics. I'm reaching out regarding a potential opportunity. Miss Zeller mentioned your name personally. If you have time this week, we'd love to schedule a meeting. The rest of the message blurred as the name echoed in his head. Zeller. Zeller Dynamics. His heart slammed once. Odette. He stared at the phone, knuckles white. She hadn't just known someone at the gallery, she owned the building. Zayden's hands were still stained with oil when he stepped out of the shop that evening. The sun had already dipped behind the skyline, casting long shadows over the lot. He didn't head home. Instead, he walked 2 blocks to the small park where Sienna liked to chase pigeons and pretend the jungle gym was a pirate ship. He sat on a bench, elbows on his knees, watching a squirrel dart through the grass like it had somewhere important to be. Zeller Dynamics. He hadn't misheard that voicemail. Odette Zeller. He ran a hand over his jaw. The name hadn't meant anything to him when they'd first met. But now that it did, it felt like a trapdoor had opened beneath his feet. She hadn't just kept it from him, she'd let him believe she was someone entirely different. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was her name. He let it ring. The next day, he didn't call back. Not the day after that either. On the 3rd morning, she showed up in front of his building. Zayden was locking the door behind him, Sienna's backpack slung over one shoulder when he saw the black car pull up to the curb. The driver stepped out and opened the back door. Odette climbed out, wearing a slate gray coat and sunglasses that shielded her eyes from the sharp morning glare. Sienna's face lit up. Miss Odette, Zayden tightened his grip on the strap. Come on, sweetheart, we're going to be late. But Sienna had already dashed toward her. Odette bent down, hugging the little girl tightly before standing. I've been hoping to see you, she said. Zayden didn't respond. Not until Sienna was buckled in the backseat of his truck and preoccupied with her coloring pad. How long were you going to keep lying to me? He asked. Odette removed her sunglasses, revealing a weariness he hadn't seen before. I didn't lie. You didn't tell the truth either. I wasn't hiding it to manipulate you, Zayden. I didn't want it to change the way you saw me. It did. She looked down. I figured. He crossed his arms, standing between her and the passenger door. You know what the worst part is? I told you everything. I didn't hold back. You knew exactly what my life looked like, how hard it is. And you just stood there, nodding, letting me believe we were on equal ground. We are. No, we're not. You live in a world I can't even afford to visit. I didn't choose you because I felt sorry for you. I chose you because when I'm with you, I don't feel like I have to perform. I don't have to control every room or monitor every word. I can breathe. He shook his head. You don't get to say that and expect it to fix things. I don't expect anything. Then why are you here? Because I care about you, she said. And I don't want to lose you over something I was scared to say out loud. Zayden exhaled, the fight draining out of him. You should go. Odette opened her mouth, then closed it. She stepped back, nodded once, and returned to the car. The door shut behind her and the black sedan pulled away. Zayden drove Sienna to school in silence. The week passed like wet cement. He went through the motions, picked up extra shifts, made boxed dinners, read bedtime stories, but everything felt heavier. Duller, until Friday night, he came home to find a white envelope taped to his door. No name, no logo. Just an address in Tribeca and a time, Saturday, 7 p.m. He almost tossed it. Instead, he arranged for his sister to watch Sienna and drove across the city the next evening, unsure why he was even going. The address led him to a towering residential building with a marble lobby and polite doorman who somehow already knew his name. They directed him to the penthouse. When the elevator doors opened, he stepped into a space that didn't look like a home so much as a dream floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the river, soft lighting that spilled over sleek furniture, and a fireplace flickering beneath a massive abstract painting. Odette stood near the windows, holding 2 wine glasses. "No games tonight," she said, walking toward him. "No pretending." He took the glass but didn't drink. "What is this, my life?" she said, "the part I've never let anyone close enough to see." He turned slowly, taking it in. "So this is you, the real you," she nodded. "And I want you to see it, all of it." He set the glass down. "I don't care about the view or the wine or the fact that your fridge probably costs more than my truck. I care that you looked me in the eye day after day and let me believe you were someone else. I didn't know how to tell you. I was afraid that the moment I did, you'd walk. You were right." She stepped closer. "But you're still here, because I wanted to hear it from you." Odette drew in a breath. "I started Zeller Dynamics from a tiny apartment in Flatbush with a borrowed laptop and a lot of insomnia. I worked 2 jobs, I maxed out credit cards, and when the company finally took off, I lost people. Friends, a relationship, my father. They all disappeared when I became someone they couldn't relate to anymore. I didn't want that with you." Zayden's shoulders dropped slightly. "You think I can't handle your success? I think most people can't." He looked at her, something shifting behind his eyes. "I'm not most people, but I don't like being lied to." "I know," she said quietly. "I hate that I did it." He let the silence settle, then asked, "Why now?" "Why invite me here? Because I want you to know that you're not a guest in my life. I want you in it." He stared at her, then walked past the fireplace and onto the terrace. The wind whipped his jacket, and he gripped the railing, staring out at the city that suddenly felt farther away than ever. Odette joined him, her presence quiet beside him. He didn't look at her when he spoke. "You want me in your world, but you've never stepped into mine." "I'm here now." He met her gaze. "Then prove it." She hesitated. "How? You said you want the real thing, then be real with me. Not just here in the penthouse. Come to the shop, meet my crew. Help me pick up Sienna from school. Eat at the diner on the corner where the tables wobble and the coffee tastes like cardboard. If you can do that without flinching, maybe we've got a shot." Odette didn't answer immediately. Then she said, "Tomorrow, what time does school let out?" His eyes narrowed, testing her. 3:15, he said finally. "I'll be there." He gave a short nod, walked back inside, paused at the door. "Odette," she turned. "You're not the only one who's scared." He left without waiting for her answer. The bell rang at precisely 3:15, and a rush of children spilled from the school doors like a wave of color and laughter. Zayden stood by the gate, arms crossed, scanning the crowd as he always did, his eyes landing first on Sienna, who was hopping down the steps in her glittery sneakers, waving a construction paper butterfly in one hand. She ran toward him, then stopped mid-stride, because Odette was there. In dark jeans and a soft gray sweater, her hair pulled into a low braid, holding a bouquet of yellow tulips that looked slightly too big for her to carry comfortably. She knelt as Sienna approached. "These are for you," she said, offering the flowers. "I figured you'd know what to do with them better than I would." "I love them." Sienna's entire face lit up. "Can we put them in the sparkly vase?" Zayden stepped forward, watching his daughter throw her arms around Odette's neck without hesitation. He didn't say anything right away, just took in the image of the most powerful woman he'd ever met crouched on a sidewalk, hugging his daughter like she'd known her forever. "I was worried you wouldn't come," he said quietly once Sienna skipped ahead toward the truck. "I was worried I wouldn't be enough," she replied. They didn't say anything else on the walk to the car. That evening, seated at the counter of a narrow diner where the stools squeaked and the silverware didn't match, Odette stirred a cup of tea while Sienna colored in a laminated kids' menu beside her, chattering about her science project and the glue disaster that had ruined her first attempt. Zayden watched them from across the booth, a strange, warm stillness settling low in his chest. He couldn't remember the last time he'd seen Sienna this animated with someone who wasn't family. Odette glanced at him. I was thinking, she said, if you're still interested, we're looking for someone to oversee the vehicle logistics for our Midtown fleet. Custom installation work, maintenance management, hands-on but flexible hours. He leaned back. You're offering me a job, I'm offering you autonomy. Good benefits, and a real shot at building something bigger than side jobs. I don't want a handout. This isn't a handout, it's a door, you just have to choose whether to walk through it. He considered that. What if I do? What if I say yes and then everything changes between us? Then we figure it out, she said. But I won't build a life where I have to hide the things I care about, not anymore. Sienna tugged on his sleeve. Can she come to movie night? Zayden looked at Odette. You up for popcorn and animated squirrels? I've been to worse board meetings, she said. That night, after Sienna fell asleep in a pile of pillows and popcorn kernels, Odette stood in the kitchen, drying dishes with a towel that had a faded superhero on it. Zayden leaned against the doorway, arms folded. I used to think I had to do it all alone, he said. I used to think no one would ever see past what I built. They locked eyes. I'm not afraid anymore, he added. Good, she whispered, because neither am I. He crossed the room in 2 strides, kissed her like he'd been holding back for far too long. She kissed him back like every breath she'd taken had been leading to this one. The next few weeks moved quickly but with purpose. Zayden took the job. He didn't tell anyone at the shop until the paperwork was signed. He'd earned it, not through her affection, but through his own skill and grit. The new position paid well enough that he could finally consider moving to a better apartment, one where the ceiling didn't leak when it rained. Odette made good on her promises, too. She didn't just step into his world for a moment, she stayed. She picked Sienna up from school when Zayden was caught at work, learned how to make French toast the way Sienna liked it, with cinnamon but no syrup, and dealt with glitter explosions in the living room without flinching. And Zayden, for the first time in years, let himself want more than survival. One evening, he took them both to the botanical gardens, a place he hadn't visited since before Sienna was born. They walked through rows of blooming orchids and fountains that shimmered in the low light. At the edge of a small pond where koi swirled lazily beneath the surface, he turned to Odette. I used to think people like us didn't happen in real life, he said. Like, what are the odds? A single dad fixing carburetors and a woman who runs half of Manhattan, she smiled. I don't care about odds. I care about this, he said. You and me and her. Sienna ran past them, chasing a butterfly with a laugh that echoed across the water. Odette reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small box. Zayden blinked. What's that? Something I've been carrying for 3 days, she said. I kept waiting for the perfect moment, but then I realized there's no such thing. There's just us, and right now. She opened the box. Inside was a ring, not flashy, not massive, just right. He stared at it. You're proposing to me, only if you say yes, he laughed, breathless. You're unbelievable, I know. He looked at her, really looked, and realized he'd already made his decision long before this moment. He took the ring. Yes. When he slid it on, it fit perfectly. Sienna ran up, saw the box, and shrieked. Are we getting married? Zayden scooped her up. Looks like it. Odette leaned in. And you, my fierce little flower girl, just got promoted. To what? Sienna asked. Chief Glitter Officer, Sienna gasped. Best job ever? Later that night, standing hand in hand beneath the city skyline, Zayden kissed Odette's temple. You know, he whispered, I joined that dating app because I was lonely. I never expected anything. Definitely not this. She turned to him, eyes soft. I wasn't expecting it either. But now that we're here, he said, I can't imagine it being anyone else. She reached for his hand. Then let's make sure it never is. And in the middle of a world built on chance, choices, and second chances, they found the one thing both of them had stopped believing in, a future they didn't have to face alone. The spring wedding was small by Odette's standards and monumental by Zayden's. Not because of the size, only 30 guests stood in the rooftop garden overlooking the Hudson, but because of what it meant. The ceremony itself was simple. No press release, no corporate sponsorships masquerading as floral arrangements, no staged photographs for glossy magazine spreads. Just a union, raw and real, under a sky brushed with pink and gold. Sienna twirled in her lavender dress, clutching the basket of dried petals she'd been tossing with glee. She wore a crown made of baby's breath and tiny daisies, which she'd insisted matched her stuffed bunny's flower crown at home. Odette had let her choose her own shoes' silver sneakers with glitter soles. There hadn't been a single protest. Zayden stood at the altar in a tailored navy suit, the sleeves shortened just enough to accommodate his broad shoulders. He hadn't let any stylist near him. Odette had respected that. She'd only insisted he wear the watch she'd given him the week before, a brushed steel piece engraved with the date they met inside the band. When she walked toward him, escorted by her younger brother, who had flown in from Zurich for the occasion, Zayden's chest tightened. Odette wore a gown made of the softest silk, ivory with a hint of pearl, and a train that pooled around her like moonlight. She kept her makeup minimal. Her eyes needed no enhancement, they were already locked on him. "You look like you walked out of a dream," he murmured as she reached him. "I walked into one," she whispered back. The vows were brief, spoken without hesitation. No theatrics, no trembling voices, just two people who had unraveled every illusion and still chosen each other. After the ceremony, they danced beneath strings of lights and the warmth of early evening. Sienna commandeered the playlist, and before long, everyone was swaying to songs she'd approved. Zayden's sister brought homemade cookies. One of Odette's board members actually removed his tie and danced like he'd never been in a boardroom. Midway through the evening, Odette pulled Zayden aside. "I have something for you," she said, guiding him to a quiet corner of the terrace. She reached into her clutch and handed him a folded sheet of paper. "What's this?" he asked, unfolding it. "It's the lease to a garage in your name, fully paid for, it's yours." He blinked. "You bought me a shop. I invested in your future. You're not meant to fix other people's dreams forever. You deserve to build your own." His throat tightened. "I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to say anything, just build it, however you want." "I'll be your first customer." He wrapped his arms around her, pressing his forehead to hers. "You already gave me everything." Later that night, after the guests had gone and Sienna had fallen asleep with frosting on her chin and a flower still tangled in her hair, Zayden and Odette stood on the balcony of their new apartment. They'd chosen it together, a loft halfway between her world and his. Concrete beams and velvet drapes, a rooftop garden and a workbench in the corner. Sienna had her own room. Zayden had space for his tools. Odette had a reading nook she never knew she'd needed. "I used to think love had to be dramatic," she said, leaning into him. "Like it had to involve sacrifice or tension, but it's quiet, and I'm not scared of it." He kissed the top of her head. "It's not quiet, it's steady, there's a difference. You were the difference," she said. Weeks turned into months. Sienna started first grade, proudly announcing to her teacher that her stepmom could type faster than the school principal, and her dad could fix anything, even broken hearts. Zayden's garage opened in the fall. He named it Odette's, not because she'd given it to him, but because he wanted every customer to know who had believed in him first. He worked with two former coworkers from the old shop, paid them double what they used to make. Business grew fast, word of mouth, good service, and a reputation for honesty. Odette kept running Zeller Dynamics, but something changed. She no longer worked until 2 in the morning or took calls during dinner. She started turning down meetings that conflicted with school plays. Her board noticed. But they also noticed her work got sharper, smarter, balanced. She credited that to a better engine under the hood. Zayden never let her live that metaphor down. One particularly cold December evening, they hosted a small holiday dinner. Odette's brother came again, this time with someone he introduced as potentially serious. Zayden's sister brought her twins. The table was full of food, laughter, and the kind of warmth that didn't need heating. After dessert, gingerbread made by Sienna and rendered nearly inedible by an overzealous use of cinnamon. Odette and Zayden found themselves alone on the balcony again. Snow had just started to fall, soft and slow, frosting the railing. Zayden pulled her close. "You happy?" she nodded, resting her chin on his shoulder. "It doesn't feel like I have to hold it all together anymore. I just am." He looked at her, the way he had the first time they met in that tiny cafe, like he couldn't believe she was real, but she was. And now she was his wife. "I never thought life could be this good," he said. "Oh, it gets better." She reached into her coat pocket and handed him a small, rectangular photo. He stared at it. Is that? She nodded, her smile trembling just slightly. We're expanding the team. He looked at her, then back at the ultrasound. You're pregnant. Sienna doesn't know yet. I wanted to tell you first. He pulled her into his arms, holding her like the world was made of glass, and he'd finally figured out how to keep it from breaking. I love you, he said into her hair. I know, she whispered. I love you too. And in a city too big for most hearts to find each other, they built something unshakable, not out of wealth or necessity, but out of choice. Every day, every moment, one quiet, steady choice at a time.